Welcome to A Dad's Path, where we navigate the heart and science of parenting. Each episode, we tackle issues that dads everywhere face and deliver actions you can take right away. Join us as we uncover the balancing act of raising resilient, loving kids. Visit us at adadspath.com to learn more. Ready for the journey? Let's begin.
Hello and welcome to another episode of A Dad's Path podcast. I'm Will Bronstein. Today we're here with JoAnn Schauf. She founded Your Tween and You, writes her blog, The Tween Times, coaches parents and adolescents, and speaks at conferences and to parent groups. She's the author of the best-selling book, Loving the Alien, How to Parent Your Tween. And as the parent of four, she experienced the same challenges and frustrations that a lot of us either have experienced or likely will experience. JoAnn lives in Austin, Texas, spends her free time volunteering and on the beach in California. You can learn more about JoAnn at yourtweenandyou.com. You can get the book on Amazon or wherever books are sold, and we'll put all that in the show notes. But for now, welcome, JoAnn. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here with you this morning. We've got lots of great stuff to talk about and hints to give parents about how to connect really well with their children.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm looking forward to this. So just to start, I love the title of your book, Loving the Alien, How to Parent Your Tween. Talk to me about how you came up with that title, what that refers to exactly.
So when our kids go through this metamorphosis from childhood to being a tween, oftentimes we wonder who on earth is in our house, what happened to our really great compliant child. And they really do oftentimes seem like an alien. The way we used to talk to them was great. The way they'd interact with us, the way they'd confide in us, everything was just going along so well. And all of a sudden, you wouldn't know what to do with an alien. And so when I was working with the jacket cover person, we came up with this idea, and it seemed to be a really great fit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's memorable, and it sort of sends the message that the tween years are a precursor for, things are changing, and you might not recognize your child. And you mentioned, I mean, is it instantaneous, or what are some signs that your child is turning into a tween? Because it's not just the age, right?
It's not just the age at all. It's a lot of their behaviors just are very aberrant compared to what they used to be. For example, your child comes home from school and you happen to be home. And what happens is, instead of them stopping and having a conversation with you, they just go right to their room. They close the door and they are in there for the while. They seclude themselves because they want that privacy. Another thing that often happens is this moodiness. Like, they're just cranky, they're just on edge. And it doesn't mean that they're feeling bad or that they hate you. It's just that all this stuff is going on inside them that makes them act differently.
Yeah, that's interesting. And going on inside them, those are hormonal changes, things of that nature?
So what really happens is what I call the trio of trials, and there's three things that are happening to them all at the same time. Now, Will, if you and I were designing how growth would be, we wouldn't have these three things collide. So first of all, of course, it's puberty. So, we often hear people say, oh, they're so hormonal. But we don't want to say that. We want to say they're on the verge of becoming adults. They're preparing for adulthood. And so we want to embrace that these hormones are getting them ready to reproduce, to be adults, to be responsible. And then when we have the next one is, we think about, why do they do these crazy things? Like, why would they throw their backpack in the basketball hoop? They don't have a reason and they don't know, because their prefrontal cortex, unlike yours and mine, is not working very well. They don't play the tape forward. Like, if I throw my backpack in the basketball hoop, what's going to happen next? That doesn't occur to them. So the executive functioning of their brain takes about 10 more years to get to full maturity. And then we have their identity. They have to go through this entire process of finding out who they are, what they believe in, who they're sexually attracted to, what they want to be when they grow up, and how they're going to fit in with their group and also stand out. So those three things are huge for tweens. We can do that over.
Yeah.
Those three things are huge for tweens. and equally challenging for parents. But when parents know what's coming and they've got some strategies to deal with them, it makes life much better. You can thrive well together.
Yeah, no, that's I think the ultimate goal. I mean, you have this child who's becoming an alien, and as a parent, our initial reaction might be stop. Like, go back, where's my cute kid? Like, just act like the cute kid again, and that's not sort of possible, right? You just mentioned all these things that are going to happen. So what are some strategies you'd recommend when your child is both strategies, but also I want to ask about guardrails actually, so like your child's going through puberty, like that's okay, that's happening, but then they're going to do some irrational things, right? And you want to allow some of those irrational things, but you also want to make sure they don't do anything too irrational. And same thing with their identity, right? Like, how do you draw those lines?
Well, it's not really so much as drawing the lines, because what we don't want to do is to try and put these tweens in a box. But what we want to do is really be curious about what they're doing. And oftentimes when a child comes home and says, "Oh my gosh, my teacher made me stay after school because I was throwing paper airplanes." And as a parent, we're just like, "Oh my God, why would you do that?" But that's not what I want parents to do. What I want parents to do is just listen to the story, talk to them about what happened. So instead of our emotions of being upset or concerned or worried, which are all very normal parent emotions, but if we can stop, not let our emotions bleed, and say something empathetic like, "Gosh, you weren't expecting that to happen," or "You must have been really surprised." That opens the door for our child to tell us the whole story. Like, everyone was throwing a mom when the teacher's back was turned, but mine was still in the air when she turned around. So I'm the one that got caught. And then you continue to listen. Okay, so you were throwing the airplane and you got caught. So you're asking for some clarification there. And then your son says, "But what happened is I'm the only one that got caught. I'm the only one that got punished, and that's just unfair to me." The parent's only response is, "I understand it seems so unfair. You feel you're being treated unfairly."
Okay, so no, no judgment, no, well, certainly no judgment, but also no, you're not trying to create a teachable moment there. You're not trying to say, connect these two dots. Well, you got in trouble because of these actions you took.
Well, that's a great question, because what the parent can follow up in is saying something like, "So if you had it to do over, what would you do?" And then the kid can think about the choices that they made, what they're going to do next time, maybe some self-control. So when we let the child voice what they would do differently, like, "Maybe I wouldn't throw the airplane, Mom. Maybe I'd make sure the teacher wasn't going to turn around in time." But what we want is that kid to be the solution to their problems. We want their voice to say it. Because, well, I don't know if you have ever lectured your children, like most parents do, but what happens is within 2 sentences, they hear our tone of voice, they hear the words we're saying, they know what's coming, and guess what they do?
Don't listen.
Exactly. They just turn that button off. They could give that lecture. So you don't want to lecture them, and you especially don't want to lecture a tween, because they're just like, "Oh my God, here they go again, the same old story." And the other thing I want to follow up with is that you don't necessarily need to give your child another consequence for something that they're getting a consequence for already at school. That's pretty painful already. So they want to be able to come home and tell you what happened and have you listen and understand. But you don't have to be punitive again to them. Double punity doesn't make them behave better.
Fascinating. No, that's great advice. I like that a lot. Because as parents, I think our guide, or what we feel like we should do, is take some sort of action. Say, okay, I'm glad you were punished at school. You deserved it, or maybe not, but I need to also do that to prove my point that, hey, you're doing the wrong thing, and to teach you that you need to do the right thing, right? And I think that's great advice, though, saying, hey, this isn't the time or the place when they've already been punished. And it's not the time to lecture. It probably never is, but especially not in these years. And those are great, great learnings. I mean, as a parent, I have, my kids are not tweens yet. And when I've talked to other parents, though, who have older kids, they have this sort of wistful, sad look in their eyes and a little jealous of where I am, say, oh, man, I wish, it was so great when my kids were like that. What advice do you have for parents who are experiencing that sort of sense of loss of the child they once knew into this alien?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a universal problem because we miss those easy days. We miss being favored. We miss getting all the likes. And we also have a sense of feeling left out. But I want parents to know it's not personal. They're not doing it to you. It's Mother Nature comes upon them and forces this new set of behaviors and ideas because it's necessary to grow up. It's just so incredibly quick that that button turns off. But for parents, I want you to know that they'll be back. They'll be back. They're not going to be aliens forever, and they're not going to shush you forever. So your job is to keep in close contact with them, not be an alien to them.
Right, right. So, yeah, what advice would you give for parents to maintain that positive relationship with their kids who become tweens, to maintain the relationship with tweens?
Okay, so this is something that is talked about all the time in every single aspect of life, and it is listening to them. So your child wants to talk to you and you're on your phone, or you're not driving, but you're cooking dinner, or you're watching a show on television. They come and sit next to you. You need to stop what you're doing and put your phone down, look at them, and listen. Because when they feel heard and they have your time and attention, that's the way you connect with them. And even though it can be very inconvenient, it's very important. Now, listening means a lot of things. And I wrote a little list here I'm going to read to you and your readers, or your listeners. Let's do that again. You and your listeners, to remind you what listening really is. Okay? It's no interrupting, no jumping in with your story, no correcting them, no emotional spillage, no admonishing them, no trying to fix them, no dismissing them. All you are doing is curiously listening and getting information.
That's a great list. That's really powerful. And it's counterintuitive, a lot of those things. And they're things that as parents, we kind of want to jump in and, again, add our 2 cents and add our judgment in a positive way to help your kid. But
oh yeah, and we are so great at telling them how to fix their problem.
yep.
Well, you can just do blah blah blah, but what we want is we want to energize their prefrontal cortex so they start solving their problems. Like, okay, so that happened, what's your plan? When you're done listening and they're sitting there, then you're like, okay, so I understand this has been a tough thing. What's your plan now? Because we want them to start making those good plans. And by letting them talk about their plan, you're listening to what they're going to say. And if they say something that is not in their favor, then your response is not, oh, no, 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 you're not going to do that. Your response is, what do you think are some other things you can do?
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, in some ways it's that simple. In some ways it's that complicated, right? We just need to listen, be curious, and then ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes harder said than done.
It is. And it's also really hard for parents when they come home from work. So they've been at work all day, made a million decisions, and they're tired. And maybe they had to fight traffic, and maybe something didn't go well at work. And then their kids, of course, are at school interacting, trying to learn, figuring out where they stand in the social circles of life. And so they've already had a big day. Then they come home, and it's up to that parent to be the leader, to set things in motion, to have a lovely evening. And so what I like parents to do is when they have that drive home is to have that be their recharging time, keeping on that leadership hat, but putting it on as a parent hat so that you're ready for what's going to come.
Yeah, that's great advice. I like that a lot. I've, also heard, you can have a little ritual, like when you get in the garage, maybe you hit the door or touch something and say, okay, now I'm in dad mode. Now I'm in parent mode. So you're,
Exactly.
getting mentally ready in the car and boom, hopefully making that switch
Yeah.
once you're, yeah.
Yeah, because what we want to do is, sit down, grab something to drink, turn on the television, call a friend, text somebody. That's what we want to do. But it's a short time being a parent of kids at home. It's a short time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's hard to lose sight of that, especially, um, when you have kids who are not tweens and then boom, they turn into tweens. You're like, hey, that, that period's over, and,
Yeah. Yeah.
so what advice would you give to parents to start preparing their kids for the challenges of adolescence and the teen years, before they reach those years? What should we be helping our kids kind of learn and understand?
Well, I think one of the things that's really important for them is learning to be resilient. When something doesn't go well, how are they gonna pick themselves up and try again? So say Johnny really wants to be the first baseman on the baseball team, right? And he's 9 years old. And he is not left-handed. And he is not that great at catching the ball, but he believes he is. And he thinks he is going to be an asset to the team like they've never seen before. Now, Johnny's big accolade or his big talent is that he is a great hitter, but his fielding is, not so great. And so he makes the team, but the coach says, you're going to play right field. And he's just devastated because his favorite player is this right-handed player or this first baseman. And that's how he sees himself. So he comes home all beleaguered. Mom and Dad, I didn't make the team. I tried so hard. And we're like, the parents' response is like, oh my gosh, that's not what you were expecting. I'm sorry to hear that. And then the kid is like, that coach just isn't fair to me. He just doesn't like me. Does it feel that way to you? It really does because he didn't give me the position I wanted. And it goes on and on. And so what the parent can say to this kid, so you're going to be in the right field. You're going to play right field. How are you going to learn to be a good right fielder? So we want to listen to their complaint, but we also want them to engage to build resilience. How exactly are you going to do this? And so when we have the kid come up with the ideas, well, maybe I could have you hit fly balls to me and I could practice hitting them. Maybe you could hit grounders to me. So what we want is to engage that kid in having a big say on how he's going to solve the problem.
Oh,
Because that really builds resilience.
no, I like that a lot. And resilience is a muscle like anything else, right? You can build it up over time and make it stronger. And, you're going back to the same idea, which is good because we want to be consistent, which is let your child lead, right? Let them figure out solutions. You can help them and listen and understand. I mean, I assume that's sort of similar, to your point, like or your earlier sort of description of tweens. They'll come home and go up to their room and shut the door, right? They want their independence. How do you balance that with wanting to have kind of open communication and trust together, because you're not seeing them, you're not talking to them as much. Like, what advice do you have there?
Oh, so just because they're in their room, that doesn't mean you're not seeing them because they may have that door closed, but you you knock on that door and you say, hey, I'm going to come in. Do you want me to sit on your bed or on your chair? So they know you're coming and you've given them an option where you're going to sit. You haven't asked them permission to go into their room. So that's like an assumptive question because you want to greet them. One of the things that I think is so important is that greeting, like, hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm home and I was wondering how your day went. What was the best thing that happened at school today? Because you want that conversation. And even though that child acts like they don't want to hear from you, that they don't care from you, we cannot take our clues from them on how we're going to respond to them or interact with them. So when you're sitting there saying, hey, what was the best thing that happened at school today? You get to hear their story. You're inviting yourself into their life. And they're going to tell you that so and so broke up with such and such, and they're going to tell you that this guy was so embarrassed when he dropped his tray in the cafeteria. And you want to know what's going on in their lives. You want to know their stories, and so you have to do your best to make those connections with them. They're not the old kid that used to come downstairs and say, "Hey, mom, you're not going to believe what happened in the cafeteria today," like they used to.
Yep. Yeah. No, make more of an effort. And
Mhm.
I like those, do you want me to sit on the bed or the chair kind of questions
Right.
as well. That's smart. That's really
Yeah, and I
smart.
think for parents who are mostly in your audience, one of the best books I think for parents of younger kids is the Love and Logic books. And that's one of the things they're really big on is giving choices that are both equally good. So, and that's exactly what I just said. Do you want me to sit on your bed or on your chair? And giving a choice is powerful because then they get to make a decision.
Right. And that goes back to you're listening to them, but you're letting them decide. You're letting them, yeah, make the
Right.
decision.
Right.
That's smart. So another challenge that I think we face in the tween years, hopefully not earlier, but it's getting earlier, is technology, the use of technology. Uh, yeah. So I'd love to hear some thoughts on that if you have them, or I can start shooting you some questions. Either way.
I will tell you what I think. It's not going away. We have to embrace it as part of our world and part of our children's world. And the more we fight it, the worse it's going to be. And so, between gaming and streaming and texting and social media, it is a huge thing. And like I said earlier, adolescents cannot make decisions about if this is a good idea or a bad idea. And so, first of all, I think one of the most important things is to wait as long as possible to give your child their own personal device. This is so powerful. It's a little machine with so much power, both for the good and the bad. But the longer you wait to give your child a phone, the better. Okay. In the meantime, you have to talk about what that privilege will look like. And it has to be cloaked in the idea or in the reality that it is a privilege. It's not a right. And so when we have a privilege, the other side of a privilege, of course, is the responsibility. And so those have to be coincide with each other, or the privileges the responsibilities go down, and then the privileges go down, which is this case is the phone. I'm not a big fan of using the phone as the punishment for all things by any means, but what I do want parents to do is set up the rules for how this child is going to use their phone, where it's going to be charged, what sites they can go on. Parents have to have access to see what their child's doing. There's all sorts of wonderful apps to really monitor what your child's doing. And of course, knowing exactly where your child is. So you set up all these rules, all these expectations before that phone is ever in their hand, because once they have it, it's very hard to reel it back in. The resistance will be enormous, like the rock and the hard spot. They're really hard rock and they're really
Yes.
hard. Yeah, it'll be really difficult to do that. But I also want to let parents know that this is not a heavy duty thing. When in one of the chapters, I think it's chapter 3, I talk about collaboration. How can we make this phone work for both of us? So when we have that approach to our child, that child thinks, hey, they're on my side. They've got my back. And that's a really strong way to set up what those rules are, because when we collaborate, it has to be both people agreeing to whatever we set out. So if your child suggests when you're doing the brainstorming part of collaboration, I just want my phone with me all the time. I don't want you to ever look at it. So you're just getting all these ideas. And then when you go down to what's going to work, the parent would say, you know what, I just can't agree with that. Let's go down to the next one. And the kid might say, well, I can't agree with this one. And so it's going to be a strong conversation, but it's going to be a powerful conversation because you're going to come away with a set of rules that you both agree to.
That's great. That's a very wise way to go about it. And, I'd be curious as you're talking about rules or boundaries with, smartphones, with screens, would you recommend typically putting a time lock on it? Not, I guess both just all right, after this hour, you can't use it, but also you get 1 hour of screen time or half an hour or whatever it is? Or is it more, hey, if you do your responsibilities, then you have that privilege, and so we don't need a time lock it.
Well, human interaction is so important. And when we are on the device, we may be interacting with humans, but we're not having real conversations. And so I think the value of talking to other people is much more important than being connected on your phone all the time. But I don't think I would ever give an adolescent carte blanche to have their phone. Oh, you've done all your homework, then you can have your phone. Because what might happen is that child might rush through their homework, hurry up and do it, and so they can get on their phone. Can you imagine?
No, I can. Yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely. That makes sense. So you'd recommend, hey, you have an hour of screen time or whatever the number or your family's comfortable with, kind of thing.
Right. And then another important thing is to have that phone charging in the kitchen or
Mm,
wherever your family charging station is, because at this age, they really do need a lot of sleep. And if they are texting with their friends in the night or watching their favorite version of their favorite movie star or singer, they are not sleeping. It's too hard. I mean, nothing ever turns off anymore.
yep.
There's no set end of the day.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's hard for parents. So yeah, if we're talking about kids who don't have their prefrontal cortex, fully formed, of course, it's going to be even more challenging for them, right? Like,
Yeah.
it makes
And
sense.
yeah, we also have to be a good example.
Yes. Yeah.
We
No.
have to be a good example, and that's very difficult because we are also in love with our phones.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. And that's a challenge. I mean, with one of the biggest challenge of parenting is your kids don't do what you say, they do what you do, right? They model after your actions and activities,
Yeah.
um, which
I
is
remember one time when my daughter was about 4, we were driving somewhere and the the lane was ending and I had to merge over, and this car was just like shadowing me. The car was not going to let me in. And she was in the back seat in her car seat just singing away, and I said some words I should not have said that start with S, like in. And that night when I was putting her to bed, she didn't want to go to bed and she goes, "Shit." Oh my gosh, I gotta watch the mouth. I gotta watch the mouth. So that was such a big lesson for me in how powerful modeling is for our kids.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
long time for her to quit saying it, even though she never heard it from me again.
And then she started up probably again at some point too, which
Oh, of
is what we
course,
all
yes,
do.
that's
So
part of her vernacular all the time.
yeah. So along those lines, then positive, being a positive model, being a positive role model, exhibiting like uh, leadership as a parent of tweens. Um, like, I guess, what does that mean to you to be a leader as a parent of your tweens? Like, and why is that important?
Well, I think sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit to realize that we're creating a culture. We're creating a culture in our family, and there's all sorts of stuff on leadership. I mean, you can go to any site and find like 25,000 books about leadership. But to me, as a parent, you are empowering your child. You're present with them. You're emotionally intelligent. You pay attention to how they're feeling based on how they look and what they say, etc. You also, as a parent, have to own your own mistakes. You have to learn to be a good apologizer. You have vision that they don't have. You're always supporting growth, and you're always interested in what they're interested, and you hold it together. So I had this friend who absolutely hated musicals, and his daughter loved musicals. Every Disney movie, every musical that was out there, she loved. And she was about 11 years old, and she said, "Dad, all these Broadway shows are coming to Austin, and I want to see them." And the dad just thought, "Oh my God, this is going to be horrendous. I hate this." And he's thinking, there's got to be something else she wants to do. But he said, "She's invited me to do something with her." So he said yes. And so they had this big routine, like a couple of weeks before whatever show, say Hamilton was coming. She gave him the music so he could start learning the songs. And she would say, "Dad, it's got rap in it, so you're going to have to get with it." And so then she would talk about who the singer was, and she'd tell them what the show was about, and they'd get dressed up, have a bite to eat before the show, and go. And they did that all the way through high school, and that became a thing that they did together. But that dad wanted to be there with her and for her, even though he had no interest in what she cared. So it was a really valuable lesson in how we can insert ourselves in our child's life by being with them and what they like to do.
Yeah, no, that's a great suggestion. How do you feel about things like day trips or vacations with just one parent with taking your kid, and or what other sort of ideas are there, or is it let them lead, say figure out what their interests are and let them you can make some suggestions based on their interests. Like, how would you suggest that?
Well, I mean, I think we set up all sorts of rituals and all sorts of ways to celebrate life and be together. One of the things that a family that I really like, they have Wednesday night. For some reason, no one ever does anything on Wednesday night outside of the home, so it becomes family cook night. So they all decide on this menu that they're going to cook, and they're pretty serious foodies anyway. And then they're all in the kitchen cooking, and the rule is you can't have on a screen and you can't have your phone. And they just have a heck of a time cooking together. But the family things are so important because that's where our kids get their first sense of belonging. I'm important, I matter, they love me, I love them. And so when we create these ways of belonging, it's really pretty fun. One of the games that we used to play in the car with my kids was, oh my gosh, what was it called? Hold on. Gosh, what's it called?
Do you want to describe?
Fortunately, unfortunately.
Okay.
Well, someone starts out with, fortunately, the monkey didn't jump in my bedroom. And then the other person, the next person's turn is, unfortunately, he came in through the front door. So everybody gets a turn telling this story, and it gets more wild and crazy as it goes on. And it's just a lot of fun. And the thing is, you have to really listen so in this particular case, where the monkey is.
Oh, that's yeah.
But planning all sorts of fun stuff to do in the car as a group rather than just having on your phone is a great idea.
Yeah, no, that really is a great idea. I was going to ask next about kind of the types of daily routines you can do. I mean, I think car ones, you're in the car all the time, so you could either make it kind of a fun experience with like car karaoke or that game you just mentioned. But what other, yeah.
So I'm so glad you asked me that question, because this is one of my very most favorite things that I want parents to do. So when your child gets up in the morning, they need to be greeted. If you're going in and waking them up, it's like, hey, good morning, it's Tuesday, I'm glad to see you, with a smile on your face. Okay. And maybe even having breakfast together so that you've got that connection and they're getting from you a little bit of love, a little bit of love. And then at night, this sounds like so old fashioned, but we need to tuck our tweens in because it's a magical time where there's no phones, there's nothing going on. It's just a few minutes of connection, like, hey, I'm glad to sit here with you. And once you get in the habit of doing that, it becomes a time where your child will tell you all sorts of stuff because it's quiet. But that requires that the parent make that commitment to tucking them in every night. And remember, you're also tired.
Yeah.
So when you decide you're going to do that, it's really valuable. I've had parents tell me, parents that I've coached, like, I started tucking them in, and now if I'm not there, they're yelling down the stairs, Mom, I'm waiting for you. Come and tuck me in. So the habit is a really great thing that can happen.
Absolutely. No, and that's a great one because as when our kids are kids, when they're a lot younger, you do that all the time without, sort of fail, and they need that. And so that's almost like a leftover from them being a kid when they're tweens, and you miss the kid part, but that's a part that you can still kind of hold on to, the bedtime routines in a way.
Yeah. I have a friend whose dad, I have a friend, and he used to tuck his daughter in every night, every night. The mom had a job and she worked in the evening. And so when she went to college, she called her dad and said, okay, Dad, I'm getting in bed. You need to tuck me in. So this continued by phone while she was in college.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really cute. And another piece of advice I got that I enjoyed was once you stop reading to your kids, you can read alongside them. In other words, you're not reading them; they start reading chapter books and bigger books, and you can read that same series, and you can kind of get in their world that way. And so you have that to bond over instead of just reading to them, which kind of goes away.
Absolutely. And I love doing that because then you can say, hey, would you have done what he did? Would you have made that same decision?
Oh, that's smart.
Or
Yeah, yeah.
I was hoping so and so would do this because having those things to talk about is really awesome. So I'm glad you do that, Will. That's really fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of Percy Jackson right now,
Oh,
thousands and thousands of pages, but it's all good. We can
yeah.
we can talk about it. So I do want to go back to technology before I let you go here, and a darker side of it, right? Cyberbullying and online safety, social media. How do you recommend sort of teaching your kids and navigating that world with your tweens?
I think a lot of times we're really afraid to talk about some of those things, but I think it's important to tell your kids what cyberbullying is, what it looks like, how it feels, what you would say that would actually be cyberbullying, because a lot of times kids, especially adolescents, have no idea that what they're saying, they may think they're just teasing somebody and not really realizing what that line is between teasing and bullying. And as far as like video games, I just think they don't need to have them. There's no reason they need that entertainment. And it seems like so many kids have them and they spend a lot of time on them. And again, the later you can wait to give them to them, the better. But the safety thing is very important because parents need to be monitoring those devices and see what they're doing. And even for each app, have their child have to get their permission to get that app.
Mhm.
And then at the end of the day, the parent, remember the parent's buying the phone, the parent's paying for the phone. It's really the parent's phone. They are just letting the child have the privilege of using it, right? And so, as that's the case, then they would get to see what's on that phone. And whatever apps are on there that didn't get their approval, then the conversation is like, help me understand why this app is on there because that's not one that we talked about. You don't want it to be a point of constantly punishing them. It's more like, help me understand why that is. And they might have a really good reason,
Hmm.
you know. Oh, I wanted someone posted something on this one and I wanted to see it and I couldn't see it any other way. Okay, well that's fine. Now let's get it off because that's not something we're going to do.
Hmm. And so, yeah, how would you address that? That's very helpful. Thank you. And I'd be curious though how you would address, all my friends have phones, all my friends play this game, when you and assuming that they're being honest, that so that you are leaving them out in some ways, or they're going to feel a little left out if you don't let them do it, but you're also not, terribly comfortable. How would you suggest navigating that?
Well, first of all, everybody might be 4 out of 10
Yeah.
in their perception.
Right, right.
But part of the empathy piece is like, I know it's really hard. I know it doesn't seem fair to you. I know that's something you really want. We're going to do it later. Because if you believe that this is really the right thing for your child and you've made that decision, you got to hold to your commitment because kids will whittle you down as soon as they see there's a glimmer of getting the answer that they want.
Hmm.
You're
Hmm.
so good at that. So if you say we've already talked about that, we're not going to talk about it again.
And just leave that firm. And I think you're totally right. When you leave that door open a little bit, it gets pushed wide open. If you say, oh,
Mhm.
well, let me think about it a little more,
Yeah,
or yeah, that's
yeah. They can only argue with us if we argue back.
right. That's right. That is good.
Yeah.
That is very true. That is very true. JoAnn, this has been really a fun conversation. I wonder if you have any sort of last words of wisdom for our listeners and viewers here that you think that you really want to impart, either that you've already said and you want to go over again, or if something I didn't ask, because you really have a lot of knowledge here. So,
Oh, thank you. I just want to encourage you and compliment you on your role because it's so powerful. The influence that you have on your child is going to stay with them their entire life. So make the most of those. It's like kind of like at the end of Back of the Future where he says, "Your future isn't written, make the most of it." And so whatever has happened so far, good or bad, that's one point. But from this point forward, you get to do something different. You get to do something new. It's exciting.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Well, thank you so much for joining us, JoAnn. Again, this will all be in the show notes, but you can find her book, Loving the Alien, How to Parent Your Tween, both on Amazon and every site. And she's
Just
holding it
get
up
it.
right now in case you need to see it. I love the picture. I love the cover. And then you can reach her at yourtweenandyou.com. So thank you, JoAnn. This was really fun.
Thanks so much, Will. I enjoyed it too. See you later.
See you later.